Please be seated. The Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Franklin Can, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of National Security, Minister of Communications and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Professor Jerry C. Brooks, Chairman, the NGC Group of Companies, Mr. Derek Hudson, Vice President and Country Chairman of Shell Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Mark Loquan, President of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, Mrs. Aziza Bash Bakri, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Mr. Eugene Okpe, Chief Operating Officer, Shell Trinidad and Tobago, other members of the Shell and NGC leadership teams, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen of viewing public, good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us to celebrate this achievement, the signing of a term sheet between NGC and Shell. Before we begin this afternoon's formal proceedings, let me start off by thanking you all for joining us to witness this most auspicious event. The signing of a term sheet between NGC and Shell is by no means a small feat and represents a great achievement on the part of both companies. This relationship between NGC and Shell is by no means a new relationship. NGC and Shell have had a long history together, with the first gas sales contract as far back as 1993 between NGC and BG for gas along the East Coast Marine area, and subsequently from its Central Block asset. This afternoon, we are here to witness a new chapter in this ongoing relationship. As we are well aware, Shell plays and continues to play a critical role in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. With that introduction, I would now like to invite Mr. Derek Hudson, Vice President and Country Chairman of Shell Trinidad and Tobago, to the podium to provide the Shell perspective on this ongoing relationship and the path forward for both companies. Join me, please, in welcoming with applause Mr. Derek Hudson.
Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, the Honorable Franklin Can, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, and member of the Empowered Negotiating Team on Energy, the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of National Security, Communications, and member of the Empowered Negotiating Team on Energy, other representatives of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Professor Jerry Brooks, Chairman of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Mark Loquan, President of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, other representatives of the National Gas Company, Mr. Eugene Okpe, Chief Operating Officer of Shell and soon to be Vice President and Country Chairman, my Shell colleagues and in particular members of the negotiating team, members of the media, good afternoon. Honorable Prime Minister, we are very pleased that you and your team have joined us this afternoon for this key milestone. Over the past few weeks, we've had the opportunity to join you, Prime Minister, and your ministerial team, which included both Ministers Young and Can, as well as the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ms. Alison West, as you met with executives from the upstream energy companies, including members of the senior executive at Royal Dutch Shell. Allow me to take this opportunity, Prime Minister, to publicly thank you and your ministers for your support, engagement, and candid questions throughout the trip, but especially during the presentations on our business by my team when we were in Houston. Today's signing of the new gas sales agreement term sheet for supply to the petrochemical markets at Point Lisas and elsewhere follows our heads of agreement signing with the government of Trinidad and Tobago for enhanced revenue from our LNG business, which of course will bolster the economic development of both the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Like a few others, Prime Minister, you have challenged me tremendously during my last few months before retirement, a period which feels like finishing a marathon as opposed to simply winding down. My apologies that we were unable to complete all matters by end February, as you dictated at the Energy Conference earlier in the year. Do permit me, however, to state that I don't wish to carry that burden all on my own. For Ministers Young and Khan are partly to blame, as they drove a hard bargain throughout the discussions. Of course, the signing of the Enhanced Revenue HOA and other ancillary matters enabled this signing today. This agreement marks a positive step, both for the people of Trinidad and Tobago as well as for Shell. It has significant implications for the continued growth of our business in this country, and in particular, key projects currently in development, namely the Barracuda project in our East Coast marine area, a discovery that we made back in 2005, 2006, and happy at long last to bring it to monetization, and the Colibri field of the North Coast marine area, some of which was discovered in the middle 70s, and some additional discoveries happened in the early 2000s that we can now continue and go forward with those developments as our next phase of production activities here in Trinidad and Tobago. This is something we are extremely excited about, having the opportunity to play a leading role in the country's energy sector and the country's energy future as we seek to build a stronger competitive position. The existing agreement which governs Shell's supply to the petrochemical markets terminates at the end of 2019. It happens when you stick around for too long that the agreement that is now terminating was negotiated by Mr. Frank Lukin and myself in 2006. And similar to how Ministers Young and Khan negotiate, that agreement finished on New Year's Eve of 2006. Hopefully it's a habit that Eugene will not have to experience going forward. The Shell and NGC teams examined many complex issues and legacy considerations over several months of negotiations, with a view towards improving the terms and conditions for both parties. This new agreement therefore allows for more sustainable alignment between Shell's strategy for further investment and development in Trinidad and Tobago, the needs of the people and government of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, the National Gas Company. Prime Minister, you've heard me say this before, and I cannot underscore it enough. Shell is committed to building a leading integrated energy business that optimizes our resources and leverages technology and digitalization to build a low-carbon future in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are well on our way to doing that. We want to continue to do this in a manner that is safe for our employees, our contractor partners, the community, and all other parties. At Shell Trinidad and Tobago, we call it safely delivering the dream, and we are deeply committed to this path. We have a comprehensive and aggressive growth agenda in Trinidad and Tobago, as you would have seen from our business plan. When we presented to you and your team in Houston, we used the opportunity to talk about some of our work in the projects, developments, and explorations phase. This agreement, like the heads of agreement for enhanced LNG revenue, represents a major milestone in helping us to achieve this plan. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of our respective negotiating teams for the hard work they've put in over the last year to get us here today. We spent many long nights toing and froing and making sure that we got it correct. And there are several elements of this gas sales agreement that is unique compared to those that we have done previously. Their focused drive, commitment to deadlines, and innovative thinking in finalizing this agreement is a testament to the talent that resides across our business. I especially want to acknowledge the members of Shell's negotiating team, and in addition, thank you, Mark, and your team of NGC for your continued cooperation. I've said it before, Mark, and I'll say it here publicly. Your collaboration, your drive, and your insistence that we get things right and do so in a manner and in a very cordial atmosphere is one that we value greatly. We will continue to be a very resilient and sustainable partner with the national gas company. As I said, this agreement also speaks to the great collaboration and partnership which took place between the parties. There are times an assumption that negotiations such as these happen in an adversarial and competitive manner. I cannot stress enough how much partnership and collaboration play a key role in helping us to reach agreements that benefit the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I consider this to be a great success in that regard. The team still have some work to do, which will happen in the coming weeks, but I'm extremely pleased that we have achieved this major milestone. On a more personal note, if you would allow me, it is particularly satisfying for me, ladies and gentlemen, as this will be the last agreement that I will sign on behalf of Shell Trinidad and Tobago. I hand over to Eugene the responsibilities of Vice President and Country Chair at the end of this week. So in fact, this actually marks my last public appearance on behalf of Shell Trinidad and Tobago. But I could not think of a much more appropriate way to do it. It has been an extremely rewarding experience, and I will always cherish the opportunity to have worked with such highly talented and motivated professionals in the energy industry throughout my career, several of whom are in the room today. Some worked for me for a long time, some worked for me in Africa, then some thought they could have gone to the other side, but didn't realize that they continued to work for me. Congratulations again to our negotiating teams for getting us over the line. I thank you and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hudson. As a student of history, I'm always fond to get a historical perspective, because so much of who we are and where we're going is based upon our respective history. While I was doing the introductions, I got thrown off a bit because I saw a gentleman of great distinction into the room. I need to recognize him. Our country's first Olympic gold medalist, Mr. Hasty Crawford. Good afternoon to you, sir. And of course, I got so thrown off that I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Fui George. I'll be your master of ceremonies this afternoon. Good? So Mr. Hudson, while speaking, he spoke about marathon and it being an entire marathon being run. And for those of us who have ever been so brave as to try to run a marathon, we know it takes discipline, it takes lots of sacrifice, and it takes plenty preparation. Good? And of course, marathon running is something that is best done with a partner or in company. I suspect that his companion, as he ran this marathon, would have been a major energy giant in Trinidad and Tobago, a gentleman who has and continues to make a great contribution to the country's energy landscape. So let me ask you all to invite Mr. Hudson's marathon partner, and of course, the president of the National Gas Company, Mr. Mark Lopan, to the podium.
The Honorable Dr. Keith C. Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Senator the Honorable Franklin Can, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. The Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of National Security, Minister of Communications, and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. Ms. Aziza Bakredi, Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. Professor Jerry C. Brooks, Chairman, the NGC Group of Companies. Mr. Derek Hudson, Vice President and Country Chairman of Shell Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Eugene Okper, COO and incoming VP and Country Chairman of Shell Trinidad. NGC board members, members of the leadership teams at Shell and NGC, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, partners and stakeholders, I am pleased to address you today at this signing ceremony for an agreement that will make an important contribution to the energy security of Trinidad and Tobago. Permit me to take a slightly different route to get to the reason why we are here today. To truly understand the significance of today's event, we must understand where we have come from. A few years ago, there were deep gas curtailments and outages in the downstream sector. Disturbances in the upstream, including shutdowns and reduced gas finds, were affecting supply. Litigation and firefighting with claims in the order of billions of dollars against NGC along with expiring or expired contracts and many strained relationships across the chain, had become part of the daily life at NGC. Simultaneously, there were several shareholder and government discussions around Train 1 and the LNG chain, of which NGC is an integral part, regarding cargoes for the future, along with partnerships with an affiliate of China Investment Company. The aforementioned, suddenly the new normal, was an uncomfortable and unsettling place for NGC and required a new business paradigm. The key tasks for the new board and management were to secure supply, increase stability, manage litigious matters, increase visibility and presence in several forums, and to transform NGC across the value chain with new structures, skills, and technology to deal with the multitude of complex issues. NGC's #1 strategic goal is and remains to manage and secure its obligations to the downstream power and light industrial customers with improved stability and availability from the difficult context described above. And thus began the high priority negotiation of upstream, midstream, and downstream contracts. Firstly, NGC had to secure upstream contracts as these were critical to gas supply and therefore critical to the present and future of the petrochemical, power, and the light industrial sectors. We partnered in the upstream, in the midstream, with Atlantic LNG, and with multiple firms in the downstream. Upstream agreements were completed with BP and EOG in 2017, De Novo in 2018, and term sheets were developed with PDVSA and Shell for Venezuela and GPG for Grenada across the border in 2018. These were all carried out successfully to strengthen and secure the energy and related sectors and to secure supply for the future. Litigation continued in the background, and slowly NGC, in discussions with those who sought damages, chipped away, coming to points of agreement and reducing claims against the company. From the abyss, light emerged, and these moments of doubt about the company's future, its new business model, its ability to operate within the changing climate and along the value chain has now been put to rest. NGC has proven itself and continues to prove itself worthy as a key economic partner, generating great value for the country. And this is because of the relationships that it has fostered. Today is the outcome of a relationship that has been cultured and worked on for years, as Derek has mentioned. As with all relationships, there have been differences which had to be settled, but at the end of the day, it was a spirit of openness, trust, and accountability that steered us to this outcome. It is important to develop relationships with those who will make you stretch and push you to become and achieve more, and vice versa. As such, symbolically, this term sheet reaffirms our mutual commitment to continuing the productive long-term partnership between our companies that will generate benefits for all stakeholders well into the future. NGC thanks Shell for its equal investment in this alliance. The Shell deal is one of the last outstanding negotiations for NGC to complete on the upstream side. It comes at a critical time for our country when there are downstream contracts being negotiated for the future. This development follows the significant milestone of the heads of agreement signed between Shell and the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries after several months of negotiation by the government-empowered team led by Ministers Khan and Minister Young. This term sheet agreement with Shell, the product of negotiation dating back since the third quarter of 2017, will secure gas from Shell's portfolio and will also put NGC on firmer ground when negotiating with downstream customers, which is currently in process. At NGC, we are especially pleased by Shell Trinidad and Tobago's recent successes with the starfish and dolphin infill drilling programs. The programs have led to greater stability in the gas supply to NGC over the last 2 years. We also look forward to the development of its Colibri and Barracuda projects, which will also help to maintain the security and stability of gas supply. Concluding this agreement and other agreements amidst the external noise regarding the industry, the volatility of the current market, and indeed the questioning of NGC's role in the industry was not easy, but it was conducted in a spirit of partnership. Our discussions were forthright, analytical, and done in good faith. NGC thanks Shell for being solution-oriented, the upshot of which is the signing of this agreement today. All worked tirelessly through long nights and sacrificing weekends, up to this weekend, I think, to ensure the term sheet came to fruition. We also expect the same resolve and effort to be applied to the completion of the gas contract that should be finished shortly after. Before I close, I must mention the people whose efforts helped to make this sometimes challenging negotiations and the final agreement come together. Today, I acknowledge NGC's board and chairman providing invaluable support to the internal negotiation team. We know that our chairman, Professor Jerry C. Brooks, has announced his resignation. At this juncture, I want to publicly thank him for his tremendous support and continuous challenge to improve over the years, especially during very difficult times, including these intricate negotiations. I wish him well in his future endeavors. I would also like to commend my own team at NGC, Verlia Kwanvi, our VP Commercial, Edmund Sobrian, our VP Legal and Corporate Affairs, and their respective commercial and legal teams, as well as Derek, Lorraine Chin-Kerry, and the Shell team for making this domestic term sheet possible. Our next step will be to convert the term sheet to a full gas contract, as I mentioned before. To my fellow colleague, Derek Hudson of Shell Trinidad and Tobago, who will supposedly be retiring to the golf course, or so he says. End of the month, I'm sure he's going to be calling Eugene very often. You have our thanks. Derek has given outstanding service to the country and to the energy industry, spearheading the increase of gas production and putting Shell in a good place of development for the future. We have enjoyed a professional relationship based on trust and mutual respect, which has translated to the teams at Shell and NGC at the operational and commercial levels. I will also take this opportunity to welcome to the table the new face of Shell Trinidad and Tobago, who will continue to lead the team with his great experience, Mr. Eugene Opere. Eugene, you have big shoes to fill, as you know, but with your own experience and relationship focus and pseudo-Trini personality, I'm confident you will do well and also take PAN to another level with Shell Invaders. As always, NGC is focused on better serving our customers, fulfilling the mandate as merchant, marketer, transporter, and aggregator, though the latter role is still being questioned. Today's treatment is testament that NGC is working along the gas value chain for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lokwan, for your words, for your background into the history a bit as well, as Mr. Hudson. What we see is the continuous trend of cooperation, partnership, mutual respect, those things arising as they began to run the marathon together. But as we all know, for any marathon, you need a coach, you need somebody on the side, you need perhaps a cheerleader to urge you on, just to make that extra push, to find that extra bit of energy on the last leg, just to push you through. Let me call now to the podium a gentleman who needs a little introduction, Professor Jerry C. Brooks, who will tell us a bit about his role and his view of the whole partnership and, of course, this whole marathon race as it evolves over time. Let's welcome Mr. Jerry C. Brooks.
The Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of National Security, Minister of Communications, and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. Mr. Ziza Bash Bakrudi, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. Mr. Derek Hudson, Vice President and Country Chairman of Shell Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Mark Luquan, President, National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited. Mr. Eugene Ukper, Chief Operating Officer, Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited. Members of the leadership teams at Shell and NGC, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Today's execution of this NGC Shell term sheet is another critical milestone for NGC and Trinidad and Tobago. It represents another foundation stone in fulfilling our obligations to ensure gas supply certainty for our key stakeholders while deepening our country's gas-based recovery. On behalf of the NGC Group, I congratulate the leaders of Shell, Derek Hudson, and of NGC, Mark Luquan, on the completion of this important phase of negotiations. Team NGC and Team Shell, our warmest congratulations. Well done. The execution of this term sheet is positioned against the backdrop of fundamental and seismic changes in our energy ecosystem and amidst another challenging cycle of lower gas and falling commodity prices. Today, U.S. Gulf methanol and ammonia are hovering at $385 and $184, respectively. Trade tensions, U.S. sanctions, and Brexit anxieties amplify these economic pressures, pushing prospects for global growth low. In these circumstances, the reset of the industry, which started in 2015, must continue to be approached dynamically by NGC, with ongoing and appropriate strategic course correction. Like Apple, we must be different, and we must be better. Given the aforementioned environment, never has there been a greater imperative for an integrated, internationally focused NGC, acting as aggregator, marketer, transporter, and merchant. Any other model will marginalize our key state enterprise and diminish our country's energy prospects. The arguments in support of this model have been well ventilated in NGC's statements, annual reports, government statements, and therefore require little repetition at this forum. Honorable colleagues, Cabinet's judicious selection of board members at NGC with a mix of engineering, energy, and commercial experience allowed our separate NGC subsidiaries to crystallize into an integrated group, providing $45 billion of assets. Anchored in a revamped group-wide strategic plan and a base of shared services and aligned group marketing, these have enabled the group to increase profit double-digit annually since assuming office in 2015. In 2018, each NGC subsidiary has again delivered double-digit increases in profitability. Put differently, it allowed us as a group to contribute approximately $2.2 billion in taxes and dividends to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Allow me to thank our teams across the group and our boards for this achievement. Accountability, good governance, professionalism, and transformative thinking have been our guiding tenets. 8 upstream and downstream agreements have been renegotiated. The structure of upstream and downstream contracts relevant in the 1990s were misaligned and disadvantaged us in the current environment. These agreements have been revamped and streamlined with the input of our commercial and legal teams and supported by our board. Complex and detailed renegotiation of these contracts has allowed the country to avoid future claims while extinguishing approximately $2 billion of claims liability. You will recall in 2015, NGC was confronted with $4.7 billion in claims. Our mandate was not to be popular, but to act constructively and deliberately in the country's interests, and that we did. Deeper research, more thoughtful and robust modeling, meticulous preparation, and results-oriented engagement have characterized our work and our negotiations approach. One of my former teachers always said, fail to prepare and prepare to fail. Every NGC team member has said, we have grown and we are executing better. Today, I thank the President, the negotiating teams, legal, commercial, and operational, for their unwavering support, their insights, and the long hours and weekends spent in the interest of our country. This commitment is reflected in the uplift of gas production from 3.2 BCF to 3.8 BCF. It was not so long ago that the country was facing despair with precipitously falling gas supplies called the Mount Trinidad scenario. Today, many plants are enjoying full daily contract quantities. There's better gas supply coordination of our sector and minimization of disruptions and outages. The critical role of NGC as aggregator cannot be overemphasized. Agreements with GPG Grenada, technical service agreements with Mozambique and Ghana, a term sheet on Dragon, Laura and Manatee, agreements with the Beijing Renzhou Investment Corporation in China, the opening of our office in Ghana in 2019, 20% participation in small and marginal fields with Innovo, and the prospect of several strategic acquisitions under review confirm that confidence in our future is validly anchored. These are all aligned to our group-wide and subsidiary strategic plans, which did not cost $90 million, but arose out of an 8-month-wide engagement with management, leadership, and our staff. Hard work done in the country's interests. Strategic plans developed by the company, owned by the company, and executed by the company. Today, I salute every staff member of the NGC Group, individually and collectively. May I take the opportunity as well, colleagues, to warmly thank the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, whose support and collaboration have been invaluable. Working with the Ministry and Minister Khan, his ready smile, thoughtful and probing questions, interrogation, and wise counsel made for a very collaborative and professional relationship. Minister, I publicly thank you. Engagement of the board by Ministers Young and Imbert, where appropriate, were equally collaborative, engaging, and thoughtful. It is this engagement which allowed us, among other things, to successfully launch the TTNGL IPO, the equally successful APO, deepen our capital markets. That launch recaptured confidence in state sector divestment programs and allowed TTNGL to pay $950 million in dividends in 3.5 years, providing a return of in excess of 45% to over 13,000 citizens and institutions in Trinidad and Tobago. Honorable Prime Minister, there are many more achievements. The CNG story, our work with renewables, including a utility-scale project, execution-ready agreements in aluminum and dredging, our embarking on the digitization part, all testimony to our team effort. It was a team effort in which all decisions were unanimous. Our group is in good hands. Our group is in good hands. Mark Lokwan is a thoughtful leader. Dr. Unan Paltu, Dominic Rampersad, and Curtis Mohammed, committed, insightful energy professionals who have all gained the respect of the international community. With the new chairman on board, I am confident of the ability to continue to recalibrate in a dynamic energy ecosystem. Our discussions with Shell and the agreed term sheet fully reflect this philosophy. Negotiations commenced in 2017. Discussions were probing and vigorous, but also constructive and respectful. May I congratulate Shell on their proactive use of technology to improve and to increase the local gas supply and to bring more gas to the market. Together, the possibilities of the Shell-GORT-NGC partnership are infinite. It has been reflected in the resurgence of starfish and dolphin. There's the potential of the Dragon field, Laura and Manatee, and local fields. These equally rich possibilities are under discussion, and in NGC, you will continue to find a willing partner to leverage opportunities locally, regionally, and internationally. Honorable Prime Minister and colleagues, my period of national service is fast approaching its end. The importance of national service was something instilled in me by my parents, who stressed, you must give back to your country. You must serve with integrity, and you must serve to the best of your ability. Honorable Prime Minister, your invitation to serve was an honor and a privilege, and I have sought to respond innovatively, courageously, transformatively, and with integrity. Today, Honorable Prime Minister, I thank you and the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago for that opportunity. As I conclude, I would like to wish the outgoing country manager, Derek Hudson, all the best. He allegedly moves into a new sphere of life. Derek has been a professional colleague of mine for more than 35 years. Derek, you are a consummate professional, and it was a pleasure to work with you and your team. I also congratulate Eugene Upcare on the elevation to his new role. I wish you every success, Eugene. May I also thank all of the energy leaders and teams upstream and downstream for their very kind sentiments and professional support over the last couple of days and over the last 3.5 years. To succeed as a country, we must continue to be transformative. Business as usual will not suffice. It will require courage and vision. There's still much work to be done and challenges to be negotiated. The great intellect, inventor, and humanist Albert Einstein noted, in the middle of challenges lie opportunity. Let us be ever vigilant around these opportunities, and let's leverage the opportunities courageously, strategically, and for the benefit of all of our stakeholders, and ultimately for Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you for your unwavering support and commitment. Thank you very much. God bless. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Professor Brooks, for, as usual, your keen insights about the economic climate, as well as the evolving energy landscape. On a personal note, let me also thank you for reminding me of an old adage I heard as a young man, which is if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. As a young man, another similar adage I heard was that what you sow is that you shall reap. And this morning, from what I've heard this afternoon, I've heard that we've been sowing partnership, we've been sowing collaboration, we've been sowing transparency, and from that, one thing that we are reaping is term sheets being signed first and foremost, but even beyond that, we are reaping benefit for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. To talk a bit further about how this benefit will really impact the people of Trinidad and Tobago, please join me in welcoming Senator the Honorable Franklin Can to bring remarks.
I'm a short man. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of National Security, Minister of Communication, and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Mrs. Aziza Bash Bakredi. Professor Jerry Brooks, Chairman of the NGC Group of Companies, Mr. Mark Luquan, President of NGC, Mr. Derek Hudson, Vice President and Country Chair, Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited, Mr. Eugene Okpie. I always like to say Eugene because, you know, Okpie gives me a little problem. Incoming Country Chair, Shell Trinidad and Tobago, executives of both Shell and the NGC, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to participate in today's signing of a new gas sales term sheet between the NGC and Shell Trinidad Limited. The signing of the gas sales term sheet has a wide significance as there is now greater certainty in the gas supply to the downstream industries. This is no mean achievement. As is well known, when we took office in 2015, we found an untenable situation in which negotiations for expiring natural gas contracts with upstream operators were either deferred or were unattended to, and which, if not expeditiously dealt with, would have threatened the viability of the downstream sector. It took the new board of directors, ably led by our outgoing chairman, Professor Jerry Brooks, and with the support of the Honorable Prime Minister, to bring a level of stability and assurance to the downstream industry. In 2017, the Honorable Prime Minister brokered the arrangement, which led to the NGC executing gas supply contracts with both BPTT and EOG Resources Limited. Today's signing of a gas term sheet is a culmination of an initiative also taken by the Honorable Prime Minister. In April of 2018, he led a team which met with senior executives of Shell in London to discuss revenue accruing from the sale of LNG and other gas-related issues. This signing will complement other contracts executed with BPTT, EOG, and BHP, now Shell. We now have, ladies and gentlemen, gas supply contracts with all the major upstream producers, and I include De Novo here now. That has not been an accomplishment from 2015 to 2019. Arising from that meeting, however, was a commitment by Shell to substantial investment in the upstream operations to ensure an assured and improved supply of natural gas. Shell provided a positive update of their upstream development and indicated that production from Starfish in ECME would soon be on stream. In keeping with its commitment, there has been a reactivation of its Starfish and Dolphin fields, and development works is projected to raise Shell's production by 276 million cubic feet per day. Shell's gas production, which averaged, and I used to challenge Derek Hudson on this because he was very close to EOG, 500 MMCF per day in 2017, has peaked in 2019 to in excess of 750 million cubic feet per day. This impacted on the overall gas supply, which has been as high as 3.9 BCF per day in some months of 2019. In the immediate future, there are plans to bring on stream new production from its Barracuda project in 5C and Colibri project in NCMA 4 and Block 22. These new developments will serve to maintain current production and enable it to meet both its domestic and LNG commitments. As in the case of the gas supply contracts negotiated by NGC with the upstream gas producers, natural gas prices would be higher than that in the expiring contracts and also would be market-driven. As a consequence, the gas prices to the downstream petrochemical plants at Point Lisas will have to increase. This is no secret, as all downstream operators are aware that the upstream companies have demanded a higher price for their gas that is concomitant with the risk they take and the level of investments that they make. And rightfully so, if I should add. In order to mitigate the situation, NGC has significantly reduced its margins and has been engaging its downstream customers on strategies aimed at the optimal utilization of natural gas. The downstream companies also have a responsibility to optimize the efficiency of their operations and thereby reduce the rate of conversion of natural gas. It is those companies that innovate and invest that will remain competitive and so meet the challenges that face the industry of the future. As a government, we take a long-term view rather than a short-term and see innovation as a means of ensuring the sustainability of the industry. We are prepared to partner with industry on practical and innovative ways to facilitate its growth and sustainability. Notwithstanding the challenging environment, we are encouraged by the downstream companies that have taken on board the new pricing arrangement, namely CNC, Nutrien, and N2000, all of which have executed agreements with the NGC for the supply of gas. We are confident that those companies whose contract expire by December 2019 will come to agreement with NGC on a new gas supply contract. Hopefully, this will put an end, once and for all, to the discourse on the role of the NGC as the aggregator for gas for the downstream industries. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody is going to squeeze the NGC out of the gas value chain. And I make no apologies for that statement. The National Gas Company group of companies comprises the parent, the NGC, its main operating companies, National Energy and Phoenix Park Gas Processors Limited, and 25 wholly or partially owned subsidiaries and non-operating ventures in energy and related business. It is a principal state entity in the energy landscape and contributes significantly to government's income by means of taxes and dividends. As line minister for the NGC, I and the cabinet endorse the role that the NGC plays and will continue to play as the gas aggregator. The NGC story is a remarkable and an unrivaled success. This year marks 44 years that NGC has been in the gas business. From its humble origins, compressing flared gas out of Teak, Samana, and Pui, as a midstream energy company involved in purchasing, transmission, and sale of natural gas, NGC has evolved into a mega company with assets exceeding $43 billion and activities that include marketing of LNG, expansion and utilization of CNG as a transportation fuel, development of port and industrial estates, and upstream gas and oil production. As a premium state energy company, NGC is strategic to the government's economic policy and will continue to play a major role in the development and sustenance of the gas-based industry in the domestic energy sector. The company also has a major role to play in securing of gas supplies from cross-border fields and Venezuelan gas. Ladies and gentlemen, NGC has been an enduring and viable company due to its ability to overcome and surmount challenges that it faced. The resolve that the company has demonstrated in the past will be required as the global gas industry has now settled into a period of relatively low gas prices, and which, to a large extent, are due to the advent of shale gas in the United States. This has changed the market dynamics. The market adjustments go straight to the bottom line of the NGC, which by recent performance has started to feel the effect of the global gas market adjustment, as most companies are. However, I am confident that the company will prevail. A gas sales agreement between the NGC and Shell is just one of the components of a heads of agreement that was executed between Shell and the government on May 29, 2019 in The Hague, Netherlands. The heads of agreement recognizes the rights of the parties to an equitable sharing of the revenue accruing from the exploitation of the country's hydrocarbon resources. As the resource owner, Trinidad and Tobago stands to benefit from increasing gas production and a pricing mechanism that ensures a fair return to the shareholders, which is the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The heads of agreement is also a win-win arrangement, as Shell, as investor, is also projected to receive a fair return on its investment and security of tenure with respect to terms of its production sharing contract, which will be extended. In closing, I wish to commend the board of directors of the NGC, members of the government empowered team, which included Mr. Mark Loquan, president of the NGC, and the Honorable Prime Minister in particular, whose stewardship ensured that we kept the course and arrived at a mutually satisfactory outcome. I also wish to thank the members of the Shell team for their professional manner in which they approached the negotiations, and look forward to a speedy conclusion of the definitive agreements including the final gas sales agreement with the NGC. At this juncture, I wish to publicly thank Professor Jerry Brooks as the Line Minister for State Energy Enterprises, and on behalf of the Cabinet and the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, for his invaluable contribution to the NGC Group. Mr. Brooks, please accept our sincerest appreciation for your dedication and the great job you have accomplished during your tenure as chairman of the NGC Group, and we wish you well in your future endeavors. I understand you're going into arbitration law, but if the NGC continues to perform as it does, there'll be no work for you, because there'll be no arbitration. So let's keep it on that course. I prefer to see you broke than the NGC broke. I also want to publicly congratulate, thank, and recognize the Shell's outgoing country president, Mr. Derek Hudson. We go back a long way. We worked the days of Trento Peck in Santa Flora when he would commute with his wife from Port of Spain way down to Santa Flora. We have built that relationship for over 30 years. In those days, he was an avid cricket fan. My understanding now he's an avid golf player, but I'll say no more. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Mr. Hudson for his dedicated service, not only to Shell Trinidad, or to the Shell group of companies internationally, but his patriotism to his home country, Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't know why Mr. Brooks chose to resign on the same date as Mr. Hudson is retiring, but these coincidences happen in life. To you two gentlemen, I thank you all very much and have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Today's signing marks a historic part of our nation's continued energy success as we aim to secure gas supply for our domestic energy sector. As an event of national importance, I am pleased to invite our final speaker on today's agenda. Please stand and also welcome liberally with applause the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, my other cabinet colleague, the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Communications and Minister of National Security and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Professor Jerry Brooks, Chairman of the NGC Group of Companies, Mr. Derek Hudson, Vice President and Country Chairman of Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited, Mr. Mark Luquan, President of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Eugene Okper, incoming Vice President and Country Chair for Shell Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Aziza Bakridi, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Energy, the NGC board members, other members of the leadership teams of Shell and NGC, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday I had a particularly rewarding day when I took part in the opening of a swimming pool in Larentil. Today I think I'm having a better day in taking part in these conclusions of such far-reaching negotiations, matters of such great import to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I don't want you to go away from here thinking that I have very good days frequently, but 2 in a row is more than I could have hoped for. But ladies and gentlemen, let me begin my presentation by thanking the people who have worked so hard, so competently, and ultimately so successfully in bringing us across chasms to a place of mutual satisfaction. I want to thank Citizen Professor Jerry Brooks for accepting the chairmanship of the National Gas Company, knowing that it was a major company in major difficulty, and he undertook the responsibility to contribute his time, experience, and intellect to helping Trinidad and Tobago grapple with this nettle. Professor Brooks, on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the cabinet, government, thank you for accepting the appointment, and thank you for your outstanding service. I say this without fear of contradiction, that Professor Brooks is not the only citizen with that capacity in Trinidad and Tobago. But most people shy away from public service and public duty for one reason or the other. So when someone accepts that responsibility and handles it the way he has done, you deserve the acknowledgement of the nation. Thank you, sir. I also want to thank my friend, colleague geologist, outgoing head of Shell Trinidad, Derek Hudson, for trying his best to be of purpose and spending some time in Trinidad and Tobago in his long sojourn around the world's energy places. But everywhere he's been a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and we were particularly lucky to have him in charge of Shell's business here in Trinidad and Tobago when the relationships were required to be one of fairness, fair play, competence, and experience. Derek, I want to thank you very much. I was hoping that I could have said thanks for high-quality golf balls, but one of the reasons why Shell might be so successful is because its executives are very cheap. I hope the incoming president will rectify that shortcoming. It is unbecoming of Shell to be putting his logo on balls that are from the basket. What do you got those there? Anyway, I want to welcome Derek's replacement, Eugene Opere. And interestingly, Eugene is a man who knows where he wants to be. Because only a few days ago, the president of Ghana was here. And one of the reasons why he came, said he came in person to let us know and to invite us, Africans of the diaspora, that Ghana is sponsoring and operating for the entire year until December 31st, the year of the return. So one would have thought that Africans in the diaspora would be heading to Ghana. But Eugene is not part of the diaspora. He's African from Nigeria, so he's left and he's come to Trinidad and Tobago. You couldn't have come to a better place. We are the only place in the world where you have the cultural attributes that we have, the music, the people, and the drilling of oil close to Caribbean beaches and the warmth of our people. Welcome to Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to you and your family. And we have every confidence that notwithstanding any difficulty that we may have, that you'll enjoy your stay here, which will be long and fruitful. Ladies and gentlemen, in this very building, about a year and a half ago, we brought to the nation and to the international community our situation as a player in the energy business. And the government of Trinidad and Tobago spoke openly to all involved that we acknowledge our presence in this business, and we also acknowledge the role of those who have invested in our business. As we talk about being colleagues, Derek and I, and a little later on, Franklin Kahn and others, talking to you today reminds me of a geological conference we had here in Trinidad and Tobago in 1974, I think it was, the Latin American Geological Conference. I was a young man then, probably still am, but I was responsible for the Tobago end of the project. And one of the things that formed part of the discussion of that major conference was the presence of the finds of our North Coast, the North Coast Marine Area, the NCMA, where Deminex and Ajip had found gas. But at that time, we were really a country looking for oil, and gas was not a major player in our economy at that time. We came into the gas business not by any vision of being in the gas business. You may recall we got into the gas business by compressing associated gas from our oil fields. And that's how our business started. And that's how Point Lisa's business started. But later on, fortunately, we had gone down that road. Otherwise, one would have to think hard what would have happened to us if we had not gone into gas business in the way we had done. Because with the reduction in the production of oil in our country, gas did fill the breach. Otherwise, we would have been a different country with a different conversation. But I tell you this so that persons who are offering us advice now will understand that while we came into the business, you can say probably by happenstance, we did along the way take deliberate decisions to be part of the energy business of our country. And the investments made by the government for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the National Gas Company, largely through those investments in pipeline infrastructure, is a model that might be unique in the world. Because when we made those investments, we were not just facilitators for other people's investment. It was our investment in the business. We welcomed and continue to welcome other people's investment in the upstream, because in the upstream where you're drilling wells, we acknowledge that wells are very expensive to drill and very risky. And with a small economy like ours, if we had undertaken or were required to undertake the drilling expenses in the upstream, we may never have got the oil, the gas fields that we have now, and one or two dry wells would have put us into bankruptcy in quickly. But so that investment is important to us. We also understand the investment in the downstream, where persons in other boardrooms take the decision that if there's gas in Trinidad and Tobago, or anywhere for that matter, they have the ability to invest in equipment to convert that gas to other products like methanol, urea, other things that can end up in the marketplace where they would sell those products. But the people who invested in the pipeline are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We borrowed money and we invested the same way the shareholders of the upstream and the downstream would have talked to their bankers and got into our business in our country. We, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we borrowed money, we built those pipelines, and we used those pipelines to allow us to be the owners of the National Gas Company, aggregating gas, buying upstream and selling downstream, and making a margin for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And if you understand that, you would understand why, when the conversation of the inappropriate presence of the NGC in the business in Trinidad and Tobago was raised with me in the opposition, I told those who raised that with me, it might suit your agenda, but it does not suit the agenda of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Our business model here has a permanent place for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the energy business. And we are all in this together. The National Gas Company equals the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we are not passenger pigeons in this business. And that's how I receive the latest advice, of how to fix the business in Trinidad and Tobago and how the NGC should place or be not placed in the business. The business model in Trinidad and Tobago has a permanent place for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, thus say the government of Trinidad and Tobago. End of story. You see, what we have to do is to ensure that our relationships between all the investors is a relationship that is sustainable. If the relationship is not sustainable, investors will then pick up and leave the place, as they've done before. In oil, we've seen all the models. We've seen investors leave us in oil when it wasn't worthy of their presence or their investment. So what we have to do is to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago is a place where investors know they'll make a return. And we are competing for that presence. And we, in Trinidad and Tobago, we're very fortunate in that sometime in the history of this country, a number of geologists were in the government of this country. At one time, there were 4 geologists in the government of Trinidad and Tobago holding the same head. And that head was, contrary to what is being told to us by others, we believe that our province still has a tremendous amount of raw materials to be found. And out of that kind of approach came our fight and victory in becoming an LNG producer and exporter. We still have 2 geologists in the government from that era, one of whom is the Prime Minister, another is the Minister of Energy. And the same way we have a unique model in the government's rules, the pipeline business in our country, this is a unique situation. And that is why we understood very clearly that the difficulty we were facing in 2014, 2015 was not geological. It was not maturity per se. It was how the relationships could be made to work to find the million-year-old, multi-million-year-old gas that is all around us. And what we had to do was to find that gas and bring it to market. We have worked very hard on the finding of that gas. Not only within our borders, because the geological environment does not acknowledge political borders. So the finding of gas in Grenada is of interest to us. In Barbados is of interest to us. In Venezuela is of interest to us. And we understand where our future lies. We are in these provinces, between these political entities. So it was important for us to build relationships, for out of those relationships come a potential for a bright future for Trinidad and Tobago in this business of energy and gas. So you would have heard today about agreements with the government of Grenada for what they have found there. And of course, you would know that very early in our tenure, we concluded a historic and probably, I think it's a unique arrangement where the government of Venezuela has agreed by heads of agreement between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela to allow Venezuelan gas to be marketed, some of it in Trinidad. And in August, as I speak to you now, I should say that the Ministry of Energy in Trinidad and Tobago and the Energy Department in Barbados are currently working on the documentation for a memorandum of understanding, which I hope to sign at the end of August when I visit Barbados for a brief stay there. Because we are now exploring in the deep water very close to the Barbados border. We are limited in the exploration that we can do and the seismic work that we can do. But because it's one geological environment, the government of Barbados is quite happy to work alongside with us to ensure that the seismic work is done on Barbadian territory. And of course, to encourage those who have those acreage to work towards exploring. And in the event that they're successful, we are successful there, the gas has a marketplace and an outlet in Trinidad and Tobago. So these are things we're working on. And we recently, in our visit to Holland and Houston, talking to Shell, technical people in particular, and of course the management who make the decisions as to where the investments would be made. One of the agreements that we've had is that notwithstanding the long period of delay in getting agreements to develop the Loran-Manatee field, which is shared by Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, that we as a government alongside Shell would pursue the possibility of developing in the short term the Manatee side, which is the Trinidad and Tobago, 30%, 20-odd%, and the Venezuelan side could follow after. But we believe and we understand that it's possible for us to proceed to get an agreement with the Venezuelans to ensure that we can extract on our side our portion of the Loran-Manatee field. And of course, what is the medium and the long-term hold for the people of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to these gas fields that are around us but may not belong to us? In the case of Loran-Manatee, it's actually on the border, so that's what you call a cross-border field. Part of it owned by the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the majority of it, that field owned by the Venezuelans. And of course, you have to have agreement to proceed to explore and produce. But there are fields in other nations' territory. In Grenada, the Grenadans agreed to enter into agreement with us and to produce and have the gas come to Trinidad and Tobago. The Barbadians in August will probably sign a similar agreement. The Venezuelans have a lot more gas on their side of the border. We must have an interest in that. And notwithstanding the political situation now in Venezuela and in the world, insofar as Venezuela is concerned, it is our view that this is not a permanent situation. The political situation will eventually be determined, hopefully with a significant improvement and a settlement of the political instabilities in Venezuela. And when that happens, the situation remains the same with respect to the economics, the geography, and the markets for the raw material that is in their territory. And that is why we take careful note of the fact that the gas fields west of us in Venezuela, we have 3 major gas fields west of us. There's the Dragon field, which is nearest to us, that's the smallest one. Then there's the Patao field behind that, that's a little bigger, and there's the Melinas field. We've just seen where those fields have been either sold or bartered to other people. Well, Trinidad and Tobago has an interest in that because it is our view that from a marketing standpoint, whoever owns those fields or have the rights to explore those fields should be made to look at Trinidad and Tobago as a place where some of that gas, if not all of it, can be competitively marketed. So now that we have been informed by the public media that those fields are in the hands of others, it falls to us in Trinidad and Tobago to find out who and to talk to those persons. That is our next assignment. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 2 issues in front of us now, having concluded the negotiations that Derek mentioned and the Minister of Energy mentioned in a little more detail, that we have negotiated on the subject of Trinidad and Tobago's expectation and realization of improved revenue from our current arrangement. We are going to benefit from some legacy payments on the issues that we've negotiated, and we expect to benefit even more using the formulae going forward. And thirdly, with respect to the restructuring of the LNG shareholding, we expect to benefit from that as well. So those are the things we've been working on. But the 2 things that really confront us now is this drive to inculcate in us the removal of the NGC from the business. That we're not going to spend any time on. What we're going to do, though, is to look at the other issue. And the other issue is the marketing. That is where the real challenge lies in this business of gas in which we are deeply involved. The gas markets have become our place of sustenance. Because if we did not rely on the gas, I don't know what we'd rely on to maintain our standard of living and our expense profile. Until other things come along, and other things we are working on, other things to come along, but until they come along, we are in the middle of the gas marketing place. And it is that place that we need to focus on and respond to And the response certainly is not to get out of it by removing the NGC. The response is not to be shy, as we were when we started in the LNG business. We are taking only a 10% shareholding in that LNG Train 1 business, largely because the thinking then was that we were not really in the business of marketing gas, and therefore 10% was just comforting to those who were going to invest in it. But in hindsight, had we been a little more audacious and taken the bigger shareholding, we would have had a broader smile on our face. But again, risk in a leap in the dark. Hindsight is that 2020 vision. Of course, I don't want to think that those who saw further over the horizon would have encouraged us to stay out of Train 2 and Train 3. But by the time we stayed out of those, Train 4 came along and we have 11% in Train 4. What we're trying to do now is to combine those 4 trains into one basket and the shareholding be reorganized in some way. We are getting some significant support for that, and hopefully in the not too distant future. We've given ourselves a time frame on that exercise, and we should be able to report to you the conclusion of some of this that I speak. But as we look at the marketplace, we see some significant changes between the era when we started to compress gas and then piped it across to make fertilizers, invest in a major cross-island pipeline, and of course in 2009, when our first shipment of LNG left here, and we had a business partner like Cabot. We were selling gas in Western Europe, and we were selling gas in Northeastern America, and it looked like we were onto a good thing for a very long time. That was a great market to be in. We received our highest price in that market in North America at that time. But after a decade, when I look at the price of gas as is reported on a daily basis now, one has to have a strong heart to compare. What's it, $2 and $2.20 today? $2.19? Imagine, I was in the country's government when we were getting over $10. $10, $11 sometimes. Took it for granted. Because the markets change, and today the United States has a surplus of gas and is exporting gas and competing in a very serious way. In fact, to get market share in the world of gas supply, I suspect, and I've been told, that there's some price discounting taking place by others who are looking for space. And of course, who is buying and who is selling? We are a seller. We are selling gas. So we need to know about the marketplace. We need to know about the market prices. And when we are advised that the thing to do is to get the NGC out of the model of being an owner of a segment of the value chain and to allow our take to be confined to profits from the market, that is somebody inviting you to commit harikiri. Because while these oil companies are very good at finding these resources deep into the geological past, what they're better at is minimizing their exposure to taxation. So I think that we can say, pass us by on that. There are a number of revenue streams that come to the state from this business, from taxation, from royalty, from its participation as an investor in arms of the business. And I think the current arrangement that we are in gives us the best chance to be in this business for the benefit of the improvement of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. All the discussions we've had with the oil companies, all of them, were based on the fact that we've looked them in the face and we've said to them, you have your shareholders, you make investment, We have no doubt that your shareholders will only stay in our country if they get a good return on your investment. But understand that we have shareholders too. And we will represent their interests to the best of our ability. I think in the last year and a half, the companies that have been operating here during this period of these negotiations now understand very clearly that in Trinidad and Tobago, we are in the business, we are participants in the business, and we are not in it for joke. They treat us with respect, and we treat them with respect. We invite them to invest in our country, and the investment is welcome, and we know they will invest because there's a benefit to be had. As we go forward, we believe that there is a period of excitement ahead of us. Even though the prices are on the lower end of the historical. But from a geological standpoint, I'm very upbeat, and I'm sure that I've detected in the Shell technical locations in Houston and in Holland, I've met a lot of people from my profession and others, the engineers, and some of the financial people as well, who are also very upbeat, that we are on to a good thing in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why we look forward to the successes of Barracuda and Colibri. These are operations that will join our current production efforts, and there are others that we are working on in areas that we believe are holding some good news for us. And as we go forward, this is a long way from confining ourselves to the diminishing Ryder Scott numbers. The investments that are being made now, I think we are very fortunate that Shell's involvement at the time, in fact, it was a period of time when the market had just collapsed. I was at Shell's headquarters in one of my early meetings, and on that day, the market was real low, and they were telling us about the size of the daily loss in the business. I don't want to repeat the number, but it was something mind-boggling, the loss per day when the price was that low. But oil business is a business like that. Huge investments, huge risk, huge profits, and potential for huge losses. And that's where Trinidad and Tobago is inside of there. We have to choose our steps very carefully. And as we were fortunate to have Shell at that time pay attention to BG, and Shell's acquisition of British Gas, I think, triggered the other acquisitions, and today we have two major players in Trinidad and Tobago, BP and Shell, in this period. Both of them, along with EOG and others, are focusing on exploration in a very positive way, investing significant sums. And so far, except with a few hiccups here and there, expecting to report good results. The term sheet that would have been the conclusion of the negotiations, the details, the granular details, I don't know that there are any numbers there to give you today, but I'll tell you one thing. The model that we have that involves NGC also has another model. And the model is this, that the people of Trinidad and Tobago get their most direct benefit from the energy sector through their energy bills. And the state owns the power company. In very, very many environments, that is not the case. And any gas price to the national power company, which is even 1 cent below the market price, is a direct benefit to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Because this business of buying and selling gas, a cent is a big thing, because you're dealing with billions of it. And we have been able to negotiate favorable terms for some supply to the national power grid, which will directly benefit the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And to appreciate that benefit, I want to tell you that the utilization of power from this industry by the average person in Trinidad and Tobago does so not knowing where the payments are made or not made. As I speak to you now, the NGC is owed $700 million by T&Tech. Try and put your mind around that. So when you leave all the lights on in your house at night, and the country is lit up like a Christmas tree, and all these playgrounds have lights with nobody playing anything at night, understand that we are burning money. We have no active policy of energy conservation. That is coming, I hope, in the not too distant future, to be able to have the minister responsible announce that we're moving aggressively on an energy conservation policy, which will have as part of it the banishment of incandescent bulbs from this country and replacement by energy-saving LED. We are moving very soon towards some decisions on alternative energy production, and importantly, these major companies, BP, and I think Shell as well, BP and Shell would be part of the national effort in alternative energy. So we are going down that road because we have to. We cannot be just burning up money and losing money, and the power grid burning gas and not paying its bills and threatening the viability of the NGC. These are the kinds of issues that a government is grappling with, that a government has to grapple with. And some of the decisions are not simple, straightforward decisions. Most importantly, in the last year and a half, we have benefited from a proper professional relationship between the government and these companies and the government's advisors and the company's people. At the end of the day, I can say on behalf of the teams that work with us that it was a tough job. It was an unusual assignment, but I think in every negotiation, you never get everything you need. But if you leave satisfied, and those on the other side of the table are satisfied, then the negotiations could be deemed to have been successful. Ladies and gentlemen, this for us is a bright light in a period which had looked very gloomy, but our future is now in good hands. And once again, I thank all the people. Particularly, we have early in the proceedings, we were able to entice Mark to leave his comfortable zone wherever he was and come to the NGC and become part of our team. And today, more than ever, as Professor Brooks is going off to do his herefore, therefore, wherefore lawyer business, we are particularly pleased that we were able to have Mark in. So with Professor Brooks leaving and Mark assuming full responsibility, we couldn't have had a better find than Mark Lukwan to run our national gas company business here in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much for coming and for staying with us. And I want to acknowledge, it's not very often that this happens, but I must do it because I know how it's done. When I appointed the cabinet, I appointed Minister Stuart Young as minister in the office of the Prime Minister. It's not because he couldn't have held his own portfolio anywhere in the government. He could have. But maybe I wouldn't have been the Prime Minister that I am without having Minister Young in the office of the Prime Minister. Because I understood very clearly that it would have been an extreme benefit to the people of Trinidad and Tobago to have the energy and the skills and the experience, the legal experience, among others, in the office of the Prime Minister because of what we had to do, because of the business that we had to attend to. And today I want to thank and congratulate Minister Young for his ceaseless energy in all of these matters. Operating out of the office of the Prime Minister on these matters leading and co-leading some of these teams, we have done a lot. And I also want to thank a former Minister of Finance who came out of long retirement and with great discomfort to himself, he came out and joined the team. I talk about former Minister Wendell Motley, who was part of our negotiating team in the early days. And we did find from the public service a number of people. The team of people who worked on this, former Permanent Secretary Selwyn Lashley, Leroy Myers, and all of these people formed the government of Trinidad and Tobago's team that negotiated with these companies. And at the end of the day, I think we are all satisfied that the best of Trinidad and Tobago got the best for Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you very much, and we look forward to a very bright and successful future.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, for your discourse on energy and energy-related matters. Throughout the discourse, for me, I kept hearing the word relationship, relationship, relationship. And it brought me back to why we are here this evening, to witness a major milestone in NGC and Shell's relationship. So let me use that as a segue, with your consent, of course, to invite Mr. Loquan and Mr. Hudson to the immediate left. Let me also ask the respective lawyers for both Shell and NGC to kindly accompany men on stage as they actually signed the term sheet. Thank you very much. Distinguished members of the head table, can you all be so kind and join Mr. Hudson and Mr. Loquan? Distinguished members of the head table, can you all be so kind and join Mr. Hudson and Mr. Loquan for a photo op? Thank you very much, gentlemen.